I sat across from my mother-in-law in that conference room, and I smiled. Not because I was relieved. Not because I was nervous. I smiled because I had been waiting for this exact moment for 11 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days. And she had no idea. Let me back up. My grandmother passed away when I was 26. She was the kind of woman who kept every receipt, every letter, every document, in a green metal box under her bed. She did not trust banks the way most people trust banks. She did not trust lawyers the way most people trust lawyers. But she trusted me. She had watched me study finance through college, watched me get my CPA license, watched me land a job at an audit firm where I spent my days tracing money through layers of shell companies and falsified spreadsheets. She trusted me because she said I saw things other people missed. She left me her house, fully paid off, and a brokerage account with $240,000 in it. She signed the deed directly to my name. She put my name as the sole beneficiary on the account. No joint ownership, no contingency, just mine. I made one mistake. I told my husband about it the night after the funeral. I was grieving, and I was not thinking about optics. I was thinking about my grandmother's handwriting on the envelope she had left with her attorney, the one addressed specifically to me. My husband was not the problem. I want to be clear about that. My husband was a good man who had spent his entire life being told that his mother knew best. She was the kind of woman who wore that authority like a second skin. She spoke in a tone that was just 1 degree below commanding. The kind of voice that made you agree before you fully processed what you were agreeing to. She had opinions about everything, how I cooked, how I dressed, how I spent my weekends, and she delivered those opinions as facts. My father-in-law said whatever she said. My sister-in-law, the youngest, the one they had poured every resource into since the day she was born, never questioned her either. I had been the outsider from the beginning. I understood that. I was not from their world. I did not go to the right schools. I did not summer anywhere. I worked. I had always worked. And to my mother-in-law, that was not something to respect. That was something to manage. When she found out about my inheritance, I watched something shift behind her eyes. I only saw it for a second. She was sitting at our kitchen table the following Sunday, and my husband mentioned it casually. The way you mention things you assume everyone is happy about. She smiled. She said how wonderful. She reached over and squeezed my hand. I felt it in my stomach before I could name it. Something like a door closing. My sister-in-law had been in financial trouble for about 2 years at that point. She had opened a boutique that failed, taken out a personal loan she could not repay, and run up credit card debt that her parents had been quietly covering. She was 31 years old and had never held a job for longer than 8 months. My mother-in-law did not see any of this as a problem. She saw it as a situation that required a solution. And apparently, I was the solution. It started slowly. My mother-in-law began making comments about how volatile the market was, about how young people often made poor investment decisions, about how my grandmother, God rest her soul, probably could not have understood modern financial instruments. She would look at me when she said these things, not directly, but at a point just past my shoulder, the way people look when they want to say something to you without owning it. Then she started working on my husband. I did not know the extent of it until much later, but I noticed the change. He started asking questions about the inheritance, in a different tone. Not curious, careful. He asked once if I had thought about moving the account to a joint one, just for simplicity. I said no. He dropped it, but he looked uncomfortable when he did. 2 months later, he brought it up again. This time, he said his mother had mentioned that keeping separate finances could create issues. I asked what kind of issues. He could not really explain. He said she had mentioned something about financial instability creating strain in marriages. Financial instability. I was the one in our household who managed our budget, filed our taxes, reviewed every contract we signed. But somehow, the term being applied to me was financial instability. I let it go. I kept quiet. I kept watching. What I was watching, specifically, was the mail. I had noticed my mother-in-law offering to help with administrative tasks, picking up packages, dropping off documents ever since she learned about the account. I thought nothing of it at first. She lived 12 minutes from us. She was around constantly. But then I received a statement from my brokerage that showed an address update request had been submitted. The new address was hers. I did not call the brokerage. I did not call my husband. I opened a new email account that no one knew about, and I contacted a financial fraud attorney. I want to pause here and explain something about the way I think. I did not grow up with money. I grew up watching my mother stretch every dollar across 3 weeks because payday was unpredictable. I learned early that the people who took things from you rarely announced it. They moved quietly. They laid groundwork. They created the story of your incompetence before they made their move, so that by the time anyone was paying attention, the narrative was already established. You were already the unstable one, the reckless one, the one who needed to be protected from herself. I recognized what was happening to me because I had seen it happen to companies. I had spent years auditing books where someone had been quietly redirecting funds while everyone around them nodded along with the story they had been told. The mechanics were always the same. First, discredit the target. Second, establish control. Third, execute. My mother-in-law was in phase 1. I hired the attorney. I paid her from a personal account my mother-in-law did not know existed. And then I waited. Over the next several months, the pressure escalated. My mother-in-law began suggesting to my husband that I was overwhelmed at work, that I seemed scattered. She relayed conversations to him that I was fairly certain had not happened the way she described them. My husband, to his credit, pushed back more than she expected. But she was patient. She worked the way water works on stone. My sister-in-law called me once, out of nowhere, to ask if I had ever considered estate planning. I was 31. She framed it as concern. I recorded the call. I had been recording everything for 4 months at that point. Then the letter arrived. It came to my house, not to my mother-in-law's address, which told me the address change request had not gone through. I almost felt disappointed. The letter was from an attorney's office I did not recognize. It informed me that a petition had been filed requesting a court-ordered financial review of my assets on the grounds of demonstrated fiscal irresponsibility and potential incapacity to manage inherited property. The petition cited my husband as a co-filer. I read it twice. Then I set it on the kitchen counter, and I made coffee. My husband did not know I had received it yet. When he came home that evening, I could see it in the way he moved careful, apologetic, already carrying guilt. He started to say something when he saw it on the counter. I held up one hand and I said, very quietly, I need you to sit down, and I need you to tell me everything. He told me. His mother had come to him with a folder. Documents, she said, proved I had been making reckless financial decisions. A printed conversation she claimed to have had with a financial advisor who evaluated my account moves. A testimony from my sister-in-law claiming she had witnessed me speak about wanting to liquidate everything and travel indefinitely. She had told my husband that the kindest thing, the most loving thing, was to ensure legal protections were in place before I made a decision I could not undo. She had brought the attorney to his office. She had been present when he signed. My husband cried. He said he did not understand what he was agreeing to. I believe him. I also know that not understanding what you are signing does not undo what the signature does. I did not cry. I told him I loved him. I told him I needed a few weeks. And then I called my attorney. Here is what we had by the time the court date was scheduled. We had the address change request submitted in my mother-in-law's handwriting, confirmed by a document analyst. We had 3 instances of my signature appearing on account inquiry forms that I had never signed, also confirmed as forgeries by the same analyst. We had the recorded call with my sister-in-law. We had my full employment history, my license, my audit certifications, my performance reviews, 11 years of documented professional competence in financial analysis. We had emails between my mother-in-law and the attorney she had hired for my husband, discussing the timeline for gaining control of the brokerage account. And we had the financial advisor she had cited in her folder who, when contacted by my attorney, confirmed that he had never met me, never reviewed my account, and had no idea his name had been used. We had enough. My attorney wanted to go directly to the DA. I said no. I said I wanted to handle this in the room first. She told me that was not typically how these things were done. I said I understood. She asked me why I wanted to do it this way. I told her that I had spent my entire career building evidence files and watching companies handed over to regulators who processed them quietly behind closed doors. I had never once gotten to be in the room when the people who had lied and stolen and manipulated finally had to face what they had done. I wanted to be in the room. She looked at me for a long moment and then she said, all right. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. My mother-in-law arrived 20 minutes early. I know, because I watched her from the parking lot. She was wearing a cream blazer and she had my sister-in-law with her. My father-in-law walked 2 steps behind them the way he always did, present but peripheral. Their attorney was already inside. My husband sat beside me in my car and held my hand. He had written a statement recanting his co-petition and explaining that he had signed under a misrepresentation of facts. He had not told his mother he was doing this. She did not know he was here with me. We walked in together. I want to describe the look on her face when she saw us come through the door side by side, because I will carry it with me for a long time. It was just a flicker, a half second, where the composure cracked and something genuinely panicked moved behind her eyes. Then it was gone and she was smiling, saying how nice, saying she was glad we could both be here, saying she hoped we could all approach this as a family. I smiled back. I sat down. I did not say a word. The petitioner's attorney opened first. He was professional and smooth, and he laid out the case as it had been constructed. A young woman with a significant inheritance, limited experience with large asset management, a history of what he called impulsive financial behavior, and a concerned family seeking a protective review. He cited the documents. He cited the financial advisor. He cited my sister-in-law's testimony. My mother-in-law sat with her hands folded. My sister-in-law looked at the table. My father-in-law looked at the wall. When it was our turn, my attorney stood up and said she had a few items to enter into the record. The first was my professional background. She read it aloud slowly. CPA license, obtained at 23, 7 years, at a mid-size audit firm, 2 promotions, a specialty in forensic accounting and financial fraud investigation, currently senior analyst. She let that sit for a moment. The second was the document analyst's report. She read the conclusion. 3 signatures on account inquiry documents did not match the account holder's handwriting and were consistent with forgery. My mother-in-law's attorney objected. My attorney continued. The 3rd was the financial advisor. She read his signed statement. He had never met me, never reviewed any account associated with my name, and had never provided the assessment cited in the petition. His name and credentials had been used without his knowledge or consent. The room was very quiet. The 4th was the address change request. My attorney placed it on the table facing my mother-in-law and asked, for the record, if she recognized the handwriting. My mother-in-law's attorney told her not to answer. My attorney said she did not need to. She had already submitted the document analyst's report attributing it. The 5th was the email chain. I had not seen my mother-in-law read anything and visibly react before. She was too controlled for that. But when my attorney began reading the relevant excerpts from the email's dates, language about timelines, a specific line where my mother-in-law wrote that, once the review was ordered, they would move quickly before she could retain her own counsel. I watched the color leave her face. My sister-in-law pushed back from the table. She said she had nothing to do with the emails. My attorney told her that her recorded call would be addressed separately. The petitioner's attorney called for a recess. My attorney said of course, and reminded him that my husband had submitted a formal recantation of his co-petition that morning, which had already been filed with the court. That was when my mother-in-law looked at my husband. I had thought about this moment. I had worried about it, actually. I did not know how he would hold up under that look. She had been using that look on him his entire life. The combination of disappointment and accusation that did not need words because he had already been conditioned to fill in the words himself. He looked back at her. He did not look away. During the recess, my attorney laid out the options clearly. They could proceed and we would present the full record, at which point the fraud and forgery evidence would almost certainly be referred to the DA, regardless of the outcome of the petition. Or they could withdraw the petition in full, and we would give them 30 days to make my sister-in-law's financial situation the one they had planned to use my inheritance to solve her own problem to solve. My attorney also noted that my husband's recantation exposed the original petition as having been filed under false pretenses, which carried its own legal implications. My mother-in-law's attorney went back to consult with her. I stepped out into the hallway. My husband came with me. We stood by the window at the end of the corridor, and he said he was sorry. He said it the way you say something when words feel entirely insufficient but you need to say them anyway. I squeezed his hand. I told him we would figure out the rest later. Right now I just needed to stand in this hallway for 5 more minutes. He stood there with me. Neither of us said anything. Outside the window, the parking lot was ordinary and bright. People were walking to their cars. A woman was struggling with a stroller. Everything outside that building was just a regular Tuesday. The petition was withdrawn 40 minutes later. My mother-in-law did not speak to me before she left. She walked out with her attorney and my sister-in-law and my father-in-law, and she did not look back. My sister-in-law stopped at the door for a moment. I think she was going to say something. She looked at me, and then she didn't. The door closed. What happened afterward was not simple. I want to be honest about that. My husband and I went to counseling. We went for a long time. There were conversations that were difficult in ways I did not anticipate, not because of anger, but because grief is complicated when the person you are grieving is still alive and still calling on Sundays. He loved his mother. He was also furious at her. Both of those things were true at the same time, and they did not cancel each other out. We set very clear terms. No contact without both of us present. No access to financial information. No unsolicited involvement in decisions. My mother-in-law was given a choice about whether she wanted a relationship with her son under those terms or not. She said the terms were controlling. He said they were non-negotiable. We let her decide. She chose to maintain contact eventually. She did it on our terms because she had no other option that did not cost her more than she was willing to pay. The dynamic never fully healed. I do not think it was supposed to. Some things do not heal, they just scar over, and the scar is actually stronger than what was there before. My sister-in-law filed for debt consolidation 6 months later. She got a full-time job. I do not know if it was the wake-up call she needed or just necessity, but either way, she handled it herself. Without my inheritance. Without anyone else's savings. By herself. My attorney filed the forgery evidence with the state bar and the local district attorney's office. That process took time, and I will not pretend the outcome was everything I wanted. My mother-in-law was not prosecuted. The evidence was sufficient for a civil case, but the DA declined to pursue criminal charges, citing prosecutorial discretion. My attorney said this was not unusual. I said I understood. I was disappointed. Those two things can also be true at the same time. What I kept coming back to was the room. That conference room on a Tuesday morning. My mother-in-law sitting across from me with her composure perfectly arranged, certain that she had already won, that the story she had constructed was solid enough to hold, and my attorney setting documents on the table one by one, each one a thread pulled loose from that story, until the whole thing came apart in front of everyone. I had spent 11 months building that moment. I had done it quietly, the way she had done her own work quietly. The difference was that I was building truth, and she had been building something else. Truth is heavier. It stays. My grandmother's house still belongs to me. The brokerage account is still in my name. I have not touched it recklessly. I have not liquidated it to travel. I review it the way I review everything carefully. With documentation. With full awareness of what every number means. I am good at this. I have always been good at this. No one who mattered ever doubted it except for the people who needed me to doubt it first. The green metal box is on my dresser now. My grandmother filled it with documents. I think she understood, in the way that people who have survived hard things tend to understand. That paper is protection. That records are armor. That the person who controls the documentation controls the story. She taught me that before I knew she was teaching me anything. I think about her sometimes when I open a new file at work. When I follow a number through its layers and find the place where something was moved that was not supposed to be moved. I think about what she put in that box and why. I think about the deed she signed in my name specifically. I think she knew something I had not fully learned yet, that the people most likely to take from you are the ones close enough to know what you have. She made sure I had the paperwork. The rest, I handled myself.